Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. As you step in, make sure to hit that like button. It's truly appreciated. As we know, it has actually affects the algorithm. It brings the upload to more people. It definitely helps out. Thank you so much. Make sure to hit that like button on the way in. And I'm about to start now. This will not be a very long live stream. In fact, this might not even, I'm not sure if this live stream is going to last 20 to 25 minutes. As we know, Mike Tomlin is no longer the coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, I actually had 4 candidates, but it's really down to 3 candidates. And the reason being is Brian Flores, I had down as a candidate, but he signed an extension to stay on as defensive coordinator, for the Minnesota Vikings. Now, in his contract, though, he does have a clause if he does not find a coaching job that he would come back as defensive coordinator. But it seems like, hey, Jerome MacArthur, how are you? Hope you had a wonderful day. It looks more and more like Mr. Flores is going to stay as defensive coordinator. Oh, there you go, Mr. Carruthers. How are you, my brother? Hope you had a wonderful day, sir. Now, here are the names that are now. I'm not counting Brian Flores because, again, it seems like now he's going to stay more as a defensive coordinator. I would have loved to have seen him. In fact, he was my actual leader in the clubhouse as far as being a head coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Here are the 3 names in play. We have Chris Shula, who has a lineage, of course, because Don Shula, I believe, is his great-grandfather. He's the Rams defensive coordinator. The Rams offensive coordinator is Nate Schneelaus. I hope I'm saying that right. Schneelaus. I believe that's right. And they're saying that he had a sneakily good interview. In fact, many sites are saying that he interviewed just like Mike Tomlin, because Mike Tomlin blew away the Roonies. For those who don't know, once Cowher stepped down, it was actually set up for Ken Whisenhunt to be the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And he was actually the leader in the clubhouse. But Mike Tomlin, who at that time was all of 35 years old, just blew the Roonies away with his skills and with his interview technique, They say he hit it out of the park. And he made the Roonies reevaluate themselves. And because of his wonderful interview, Mike Tomlin became head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And as you know, the rest is history. Ken Whisenhunt never had another NFL head coaching job offer after that. I believe even though it didn't work out the way it wanted for us, Tomlin over Whisenhunt, the Roonies were right in hiring Mike Tomlin. Now, a lot of people, as you know, have tried to say, oh, well, he was a Rooney Rule hire because he was a minority, this, that, and the third. We all know how I feel about that. Now, there's the one name that irks me as far as being a head coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And he's from Pittsburgh. He's from the area. And once upon a time, he actually won a Super Bowl ring. And I think you know who I'm talking about, ladies and gentlemen. It's Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy was the head coach of the Green Bay Packers for quite a while. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, he and Mike Tomlin, I believe, started around the same time. I think they both started in 2007. And as we know, Mike McCarthy was the head coach that beat out Tomlin and the Steelers with Aaron Rodgers, Greg Jennings, and friends. I think James Starks was the feature back, even though he was always hurt. But that's when Aaron Rodgers was at the height of his powers. And that Green Bay Packers team, we thought underachieved and would win both multiple championships. And as you know, Aaron Rodgers has that one championship, just as Mike Tomlin only had that one championship in 2008, his second full year as head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. We all remember the 2-minute championship drive, the greatest 2-minute drive in Super Bowl history. That was engineered by Big Ben Roethlisberger, and he basically lived his whole career off of that. Now, Big Ben had great years. In fact, actually, Big Ben had his finest years after they won the title, but he was never able to galvanize the Steelers to put them over the hump and win that second Sticky Lombardi, as Coach Tomlin used to call it. So now we hear the name Mike McCarthy being bandied about. Last we saw Mike McCarthy, he was the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. How did that work out? Now, a lot of people are going to say, well, Jerry Jones is the real head coach there. He's the coach of GM. He was more of a puppet, blah, blah, blah. And you know what? I cannot say that that is not the truth. Now, if you were to tell me that Mike McCarthy would be the offensive coordinator for the Pittsburgh Steelers, I would be very excited because Mike McCarthy is a wonderful play caller. No matter how you feel about his coaching skills, his offensive coordinator skills are top tier. They just are. Always have been. When Mike McCarthy took over play calling duties for both Green Bay and Dallas, those teams did very well, at least in the regular season. Now, you talk about trouble afterwards. Well, of course, Mike McCarthy was dreadful in the playoffs. Just as Mike Tomlin was dreadful and hadn't won a playoff game since 2016, we could be saying the same thing about Mike McCarthy. For that, you might as well have kept Mike Tomlin. At least that's how I feel. Now, as far as interviewing has gone, from what I hear, Chris Shula was solid. Mike McCarthy, as we know, interviewed for the Steelers as well. But right now, the leader in the clubhouse, if you were to be a betting man, it would be Nate Schierlas. And he does have a lot of the features that Mike Tomlin had when he was the candidate for the Pittsburgh Steelers all those years ago. Schierlas is 35 years old. Mike Tomlin was 34, 35 when he was hired. The difference is he's the offensive coordinator for the LA Rams, coming out of that coaching tree. Ironically, Mike Tomlin came out of the coaching tree and won John Gruden, where he was the coordinator for the secondary. People forget that. Mike Tomlin wasn't the defensive coordinator, but he dealt with the secondary for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And we all know how very good that secondary was back in the day. If you saw the Super Bowl, you saw how good they were. So ironically, he was not a part of Tony Dungy's tree, but part of John Gruden's tree. And it's funny when I bring up John Gruden, because a lot of people criticize Mike Tomlin for winning only with players that were provided by Bill Cowher. Bill Cowher was not the GM. It was Kevin Colbert. Kevin Colbert provided those players. And to be quite honest, Mike Tomlin got more out of those players than Bill Cowher ever did. Bill Cowher, after winning the title, went 8-8 with that very same team. Ladies and gentlemen, I do not want Mike McCarthy anywhere near the Pittsburgh Steelers being the head coach. If you tell me he's the offensive coordinator, fine. If Mike McCarthy is the head coach, I might have to look for a second team. Because there is no way that Mike McCarthy is qualified to be the head coach of the Steelers. Mike McCarthy shouldn't even wipe the butt off of the head coach who should be the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. He shouldn't be let anywhere near the clubhouse. He shouldn't be let anywhere near the sidelines. I don't think he's allowed to use the toilet in Acrisure Stadium. If you're going to cry about the mediocrity under Mike Tomlin, then wait till you get a load of Mike McCarthy, because he's much worse. At least with Shula and Shierhouse, those guys are very young, and those guys should be able to grow into the job of head coach. Mike McCarthy's 62. I don't see him having 10 years left in him. I don't. Maybe somebody else does. I sure as heck don't. Now, has he done well with quarterbacks? Absolutely. Dak Prescott has become who he is right now because of Mike McCarthy. That's just a fact. Now, maybe if Mike McCarthy had, I don't think so. I'll take that back. I was just about to say, maybe if Mike McCarthy had a George Pickens, maybe Mike McCarthy would have kept his job, but that's a negative. You saw how George Pickens dogged it at the end of this season for Brian Schottenheimer. And let's face it, you haven't even seen the worst of him unless you get rid of him now. I think if I'm the Dallas Cowboys, I might do a sign and trade with George Pickens. I would not bring George Pickens back to the Cowboys organization if I were Dallas and Jerry Jones. And that means that Jerry Jones would more likely bring him back, because we know that Jerry Jones doesn't exactly always do the smart thing. Remember, these guys are still showing Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, and Michael Irvin highlights. And maybe I'm needling the Cowboys a little bit because my sister's a Cowboy fan. I hope the Steelers listen to their fan base, because many of the fan base, well over 70%, don't want Mike McCarthy anywhere near the building. The Rudies do have a history of actually listening to their fan base. Let's hope they continue to do so. As I said before, this was not going to be a long live stream. If anything develops, I will definitely come back on. I will support the next head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers just as long as it's not Mike McCarthy. I mean, I will have to root for the Steelers either way, but I'll have to have a second team because there's absolutely no way, in my opinion, that Mike McCarthy should be head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe, ladies and gentlemen. Uncle Claude signing out. I'd like to thank Jerome MacArthur and Mr. Carruthers, all those in the clouds, all those in the bushes. Thank you so much. Make sure to hit the like button on the way out. Uncle Claude signing out. Take care. Stay safe. And God bless. Good night, everybody.